Before a human ever reads your resume, an algorithm has already decided whether you matter. Not maybe. Not at some companies. At the majority of large employers, your application is scored, ranked, and often discarded by software before any person lays eyes on it. The question worth sitting with is what exactly gets lost when that happens, and whether we even notice. Hiring has always had a gatekeeping problem. Long before algorithms, decisions were shaped by which school you attended, whether your name sounded familiar, whether your handshake was firm. Human bias was baked into every stage, and we knew it. Or at least we suspected it. So when automated screening tools arrived promising consistency and scale, there was a genuine appeal. Let the software be neutral, we told ourselves. Let the machine be fair. The promise was reasonable. If a hiring manager unconsciously favors candidates who went to the same university, maybe removing that decision from a human hand reduces the bias. That logic is not wrong exactly, but it contains an assumption so large it is almost invisible. That the system doing the filtering is itself free from the preferences of whoever built it and trained it on whatever historical data they fed it. And that is where things get complicated. These systems learn what a good hire looks like by studying past hires. People who were promoted, people who stayed, people who were rated highly by their managers. Which means the algorithm learns to reproduce the judgment of the past. If the past was biased, if it rewarded certain types of people, the algorithm does not correct for that. It encodes it. It runs it at scale, automatically, without fatigue or doubt. Amazon built a recruiting tool in the mid-2010s and quietly scrapped it when engineers discovered it was systematically downgrading resumes that included the word women's, as in women's chess club, women's college, because the model had learned from a decade of hiring patterns in a male-dominated industry. Nobody programmed it to discriminate. It learned to. That distinction matters enormously and is easy to miss. What makes this different from ordinary institutional bias is the invisibility of the mechanism. When a human interviewer passes on a candidate for unclear reasons, there is at least a trail, a person who made a choice, who could be questioned, who might feel some accountability. When a screening algorithm rejects you in 3 seconds, there is no face, no reasoning given, often no appeal. The decision is not experienced as a decision at all. It reads like a technical outcome. Researchers who study this call it automated decision laundering. The bias is real, but it has been passed through a machine, and so it arrives stripped of moral authorship. No one is accountable because technically, no one decided. The algorithm decided. And the algorithm, we are often told, is just math. Math in our culture carries an unearned aura of objectivity. Numbers feel like facts rather than choices, even when they are neither. Beyond bias, something subtler is being lost. Human judgment in hiring, at its best, was never just pattern matching. It could hold contradictions. A hiring manager might look at a resume with an unexplained gap and wonder rather than reject. What happened there? They might sense potential in an unusual career path that no keyword search would surface. They might take a chance on someone who didn't fit the profile but seemed, in some hard-to-articulate way, right for the role. That kind of judgment is frustratingly inefficient and sometimes wrong. But it is also how many of us got our first real chance. Someone saw something in us that the data hadn't captured yet. When screening becomes fully automated before any human contact, that door closes. Not dramatically, not with a sign on it. It just quietly stops being a door. There is also a feedback loop worth naming. As these tools become standard, applicants learn to optimize for them. Resume coaches now advise including specific keywords drawn from job descriptions. Not because they best describe your experience, but because the algorithm expects them. Cover letters are being ghost-written partly to pass AI detection. Candidates are gaming a system that is itself automated. And both sides are now essentially talking to machines, not to each other. What that produces at the far end of the funnel is a pool of candidates optimized for screenability, not necessarily for capability. The people who land interviews are increasingly people who are good at presenting themselves in machine-readable terms. That is a specific skill, but it is not obviously related to the skill of doing the job. We are running a filter, and then forgetting we ran it, and then wondering why something feels slightly off about the people we are hiring. None of this means automation in hiring is straightforwardly bad. The alternative, a human process, was never clean either. Unstructured interviews are notoriously unreliable predictors of performance. Reference checks are often theatre. Gut feel has a poor track record and a well-documented tendency to favour people who remind the decision-maker of themselves. The problem isn't that machines replaced a golden age of fair human judgment. That age didn't exist. The problem is that we replaced one flawed system with another flawed system while telling ourselves we had solved it. And the new system is harder to see, harder to challenge, and tends to scale its flaws rather than contain them. One biased hiring manager makes bad calls on a few dozen candidates a year. One biased algorithm can process millions of applications before anyone realizes something is wrong. There is a version of this that could go better. Structured screening with transparent criteria, audits of algorithmic outcomes by demographic, human review at meaningful decision points, not as rubber stamping, but as genuine check. Some companies are experimenting with exactly that. What those approaches share is a refusal to treat automation as the end of the story, as if passing a decision to software means the decision has been made well. The deeper issue, though, isn't solved by better tooling. It's about what we think hiring is for. If it is purely a matching problem, find the person most likely to perform well according to measurable criteria, then optimization makes sense and human judgment is just noise to be filtered out. But if hiring is also a relational act, an extension of trust, a moment where an organization decides what kind of people it wants to become, then something is lost when no human ever considers the question. We are not at the end of this change. The tools are getting faster, more confident, more embedded in platforms that most employers use without thinking much about the assumptions underneath. What we can do, as applicants, as hiring managers, as people who work in organizations, is at least refuse the comfort of thinking the algorithm is neutral. It isn't. It's a set of choices made by people, trained on history, pointed at your future. That deserves more than a shrug.